Hello, everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today I want to talk to y'all about the Quill and Flame romance controversy. So for those of y'all that are not familiar with what this is, a publishing company that specializes in romance novels posted on their social media about how they only publish clean romance. And what they mean by this is that it's, for lack of a better term, a no smut publishing company. And so this got the internet very heated and a huge debate started. A lot of people said that Quill and Flame was basically shaming other publishing companies and authors and readers who enjoy smut, whereas others argued against that, saying that not every romance novel has to have smut in it, that there can be clean romance, and this is the place for it. Now, of course, regardless of what exactly that particular publishing company's intentions were, from what I saw of the original post, it definitely could have been worded better than it was. However, I do agree that there is a time and place for everything, and there are some readers who just enjoy reading clean romance, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, this controversy also brought up the very important topic, which has been discussed a lot the past couple months, that there really isn't anything wrong with smut either, despite the fact that there are a lot of people who think there really is. So let's get into that. Now, what exactly is smut? Smut is basically any sort of scene in not just romance, but any story where it's what they call an open door scene. And this means that you are right there in the action with the the that going on, the woo going on, that fun stuff. It's explicit. It gives you the play-by-play on what's happening, how the characters are feeling, all the sensations, all that salacious goodness. That is what smut means. And so there are plenty of romance novels out there, and they are gaining popularity by leaps and bounds. And there's actually a big reason behind that. Unfortunately, as many of y'all are aware at this point, everything's terrible, everything's crazy, and it's kind of scary out there with all of the political everything that's going on. And unfortunately, ladies are a big target. Basically, there are a lot of men who would prefer that we all shut up and go live in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant and only speak when we're spoken to and be pure little angels, but somehow also be like fantastic in the bedroom. Just so many fun contradictions. And a big part of that is just this infantilization of women, in that there are so many people, not just men, but also other women, which weird, who think that women shouldn't be allowed to give in to their carnal desires. And a lot of people are making the argument of that honestly, romance novels are a great way for anyone to consume salacious types of content because it is purely fantasy. There are no people or creatures otherwise involved, which means that nobody gets hurt. It's just a fun time, imagination time in your head. No peoples are involved, no creatures are involved, and everybody gets to experience it the way that they want to experience it in a way that feels safe for them. Whereas, unfortunately, in the corn industry, it is well known for underage persons being roped into it, people being pushed to do things that they don't necessarily feel comfortable with, people being put in unsafe situations, and even revenge corn that people did not consent to. All sorts of ways for people to get hurt. Now, mind you, this is not at all meant to give any shade to any of the people that work happily, consenting, and of age, and all of that in that industry. It is a wide spectrum. However, the argument can be made that if you are looking for the most ethical and safest way to consume that type of content, honestly, smut books are the best way to go about it. And that's the big topic that a lot of people are bringing up with this particular type of discussion, is that a lot of men in particular are very upsetty spaghetti about women consuming smutty books. And a big part of their argument is, oh my goodness, the pharaoh sex shouldn't be doing this. That's what men do, and men are gross, and, you know, only men consume salacious things, and how dare women be, as they are, the term these days that the kids are using is gooning. And it kind of begs the question of, do they really think women just suddenly out of nowhere started this gooning? I have news for you, my sweet summer child. Women have been gooning forever. Women are human, just like everybody else. They have feelings and urges and thoughts and imaginations, just like everyone else. And my goodness, some of the topics that I have seen for some of these salacious novels in particular, wow, just wow. Like, my goodness, some of these topics. Woo! Getting a little spicy in here. So why exactly is this important, and why should anybody care? I mean, at the end of the day, no, nobody should have to care. You shouldn't be shamed for whether you want to read clean romance or you want to read the darkest, dirtiest, smuttiest of smut. That shouldn't matter, number one. And then number two, this shouldn't even have to be an issue. People should just be able to consume the media that they want to consume as long as it's not hurting anybody, which last time I checked, smutty books are not hurting anybody. But the problem is just this weird infantilization of women in claiming that we shouldn't be allowed to read this kind of stuff, and that these kind of books shouldn't be allowed to be published and shouldn't be allowed to be put in bookstores. And yet we have mega industries that are all about sexualizing women, objectifying women, and of course the entire porn industry, which by and large caters to men. Once again, the unfortunate misogynistic divide of our patriarchal society. How exactly is it that the Quill Flame was really the tipping point for everybody to just lose their collective minds on the internet, if this has definitely been a thing that's been simmering for a while now? And really, it's one of those things where you just need a tipping point, and that particular social media post just happened to be it. It was a very public statement from a publisher, which publishers and literary agents are at the top of the food chain of the publishing industry. And so when they say something that's not exactly put in the best light, that gets far more attention than anything that an author or an editor or anyone else below on the food chain could possibly have posted, unless it's somebody that's at the tippy 1% top, such as Stephen King or She Who Shall Not Be Named, or any of the other super duper household name famous authors. There's only a few of them. Because of that, they have a responsibility that they need to present things in the best light that they can and be careful about how they present things. And unfortunately, this publisher did a pretty bad job of doing that. Again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with publishers putting in place the boundaries that they want to have. If a publisher only wants to publish clean romance or closed door romance, whatever you want to call it, that's their business. If they only want to publish romantasy, which is fantasy romance, or, you know, whatever particular genre or whatever particular style, that is literally at the discretion of the publishing house. That is their right. There are so many publishing houses out there now that there's a place for everyone in everything. So that's not the issue here. The issue is how they went about saying it. They made it sound like, oh, come here if you don't want any of that very icky, yucky smut. Oh, bah. That was kind of the vibe they were giving with the posts that they made. And that's where it's not okay. And the fact that this whole section of literature, and yes, I'm going to use the word literature, and you can be mad about it. This whole section of literature has just been shit on since forever. And for those of y'all who want to claim, well, smut can't be literature, Oh boy, honey, do I have news for you. My goodness, apparently it's considered literature if a man writes it, because a lot of those classics that y'all love to do about it being literature have some pretty salacious scenes in them. Not to mention the fact that Shakespeare, by and large, is a whole bunch of dick jokes and fart jokes once you get past the hoity-toity fancy language. It's a whole lot of silliness. Newsflash, all of the poems and the plays and the everything that Shakespeare wrote were literally to entertain Queen Elizabeth I. That was literally what they were for. They were for Her Majesty's enjoyment, whether she wanted to laugh at fart jokes or she wanted everybody to tell her how pretty she was. That was literally the entire purpose of all of that writing. It's not as highbrow as you want to think it is. Even the very first novel that we can really point to in history, that even opens up with a crazy sex scene of some like monster thing like getting it on with some lady. There are plenty of salacious sex scenes in the classics, and, you know, a step below that, there's plenty of sexualizing and objectifying women in the classics. So you can't sit here and tell me that all of the literature is absolutely pure and clean and free of any sort of salacious scenes. It's just dressed up with fancier language. That's about it. And honestly, it just kind of shows the evolution of language, if anything else. And the thing is that people didn't even really talk like that so much as there was just a sort of expectation of how things that are published, stories, written word, should be presented a certain way. But that's not how people talked in everyday life. And honestly, if you read a lot of books even today, a lot of those books are still presented in a certain formal light that's a definite step back from the way that people talk in real life, if not for the fact that a lot of us talk in run-on sentences, a lot of us talk in fragmented thoughts, a lot of us will have completely disjointed conversations, and in the world of books, writing has to make sense. Scenes and sentences have to make sense, and in real life, we don't have to make sense. So there's still that line of formality there when it comes to writing. So even though they were using very fancy language back then, that was simply the expectation of how the wrapping should be presented. It didn't matter what the contents were. You could still make the contents as sexy and salacious as you wanted as long as you talked very proper like this. That was about it. So again, I feel that honestly, the bigger push behind this controversy goes even beyond writers and authors and readers and the publishing industry, and really has to do with the political and social pressure of the current times. We are seeing a lot of pushback against freedom of sexuality, freedom of gender, freedom of sexual expression, and honestly, freedom for women to be able to live their own lives and have control over their own bodies. And whenever you see big pushes against that sort of stuff, you see a lot more of this purist point of view and this idea of women being these sexless, pure beings that, you know, need to be looked after, and, you know, we need to take care what they're exposed to and all that. But then behind closed doors, we can treat them as raunchily as we want, which is the objectification part of it, which is gross. Unless you're into that and everyone's consenting, then please do have a great time being an object. However, that's not the point we're making here. And so I would love to hear what y'all think in the comments about this. I personally feel that, you know what? Whatever floats your boat, that if you want to read, you know, clean romance where they just have longing looks and holding hands and they live happily ever after, good for you. Those stories are fantastic and wonderful and lovely, and if you want to have the darkest of dark, the dirtiest of dirty, the smuttiest of smut, that's also valid too. And nobody should be shamed for liking either one of those things, but by and large also we have to remember, neither of them is better than the other. They are just different forms of writing, and that's what makes writing so very special, is that you can create literally whatever you want. And as a reader, you have the freedom to read whatever you want. And I think that that's the most important takeaway from this, is let's all make sure that we still have the freedom to read those things that we want to read. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.